Hey out there, all you rock and roll fans. Welcome to the 64th edition of the Ugly American Werewolf in London rock podcast, recorded here in northwest central London, just off historic Abbey Road. And I want to thank everybody who tuned in last week to our episode on Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, the hard-hitting, sleazy debut that skyrocketed GNR to the top of the charts, where they stayed for 4 or 5 years before it really all kind of fell apart. And we really thank Chris from @RockTheseTweets for being a part of that. Great guy, great guest, super knowledgeable, and a fun conversation that we had about GNR and Appetite. So if you haven't heard that one already, please go back and check that one out. We're going to shift gears here a little bit this week as we talk about Tom Petty. And this is an album we're going to do that's maybe not that familiar to most people. As soon as we say Tom Petty, most people jump immediately to Full Moon Fever or maybe the debut album, something like that. But one celebrating its 40th anniversary this year is Long After Dark. And the big hit song off that was You Got Lucky, which featured the boys in a kind of post-apocalyptic setting, discovering video games and discovering a jukebox and a little boom box to hear some old music in. That was all over MTV in like 1982, 1983. But that was really the only big hit off of it. It marked an interesting time for Tom where he had been battling with record companies and battling for publishing rights, battling for the price of his albums to not go up and rip off the fans, trying to do some stuff with Stevie Nicks. It was just kind of a tough time. And in fact, I think the delay of the release of Hard Promises, which came out right before Long After Dark, maybe hindered Long After Dark a little bit, and that was kind of running into the same place in people's minds as, hey, didn't Tom Petty just make a new record kind of thing? So it was kind of a tough time. Plus, I'm not sure how enamored he was with MTV as of yet. So he worked with Jimmy Iovine to create this album, and I think it's great. It's often overlooked, but I think it's a wonderful Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers record. It sounds like them. If you'd never heard it before, you immediately would pick up that it's them. There's going to be one song that most everyone will recognize with It's You Got Lucky. But the rest of them are very much Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Not everyone's golden, but I think overall as an album, it's a good one, and we want to shed some more light on it here today. Now, just a little bit of housekeeping. As usual, we want you to subscribe and download anywhere you get your podcast. If you could ever leave us a quality review, that would be huge for us. It just helps us find more fans. And please check out Good Pods. It's a great place to find new podcasts and interact with the podcasters who create them. Of course, you can always DM or tweet us at ugly_werewolf and at actionjack72. So with that, folks, we're going to take you back in the time machine 40 years, going back for an artist who's no longer with us, Tom Petty, who really made a huge impression all over the world, is hailed as one of the great American rock and roll songwriters, and a heck of a cool guy who fought for what was right for artists, for individuals, for songwriters. He lost his life a few years ago. I was lucky enough to see him a few times live, and we will talk about it here on the show. But let's dig in. Let's get into the often overlooked Long After Dark on its 40th anniversary here on The Wolf. You know, I had a lot of fun listening to this record again, Jackson. I put it on a few nights ago after we'd had a good family day, family evening. Had a good time together, and the girls were going to bed, and I was going to crack a few beers. And I put on these songs, which I hadn't listened to probably since around when Tom Petty died. And I just thought, wow, man, this is still great. This is still great American rock and roll, man. Tom Petty was awesome. I had so much. I didn't like Tom Petty much when I was younger, but I really grew to appreciate how awesome he was, how big time he was as a songwriter who could really relate.
Why did you not like him?
Why did I not like him? Yeah, it's, part of it's that, you know, he's shoved down your throat a little bit. Like, okay. Rolling Stones says he's great, MTV loves him, everybody says, okay, he's so great, and all that. Kind of like the way they did with John Mellencamp, and I never really liked him, and I still really don't. He's just an American, you know, yeah, whatever. But I don't know. And, you know, when I first was getting into music, I was into new wave and pop and Michael Jackson and stuff like that. And even though I had some appreciation for rock and roll, and I don't know, he just didn't fit the bill for some reason to me. I had to grow up a little bit and come to appreciate his songs a little bit more.
I would say the same thing. I mean, I probably first got introduced to Tom Petty through "Don't Come Around Here No More." That was a big MTV video.
Right.
I thought it was cool because look, it's Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics playing that wacky sitar intro to it. It was a cool video, the Alice in Wonderland deal, and then it kind of fell off until probably Full Moon Fever, and that was big. And then in college, we kind of started to get into more stuff that was not that like AC/DC. You know, like there is no big riffs in here. And then You Got Lucky started to come back onto the radar again, and then that's where this album kind of got reintroduced to me. But there isn't any big hooks. There's no big solos. But I think Mike Campbell is severely underrated now that I've listened to this. He's not real flashy, but he's real, like, he's got that, like, Keith Richards, Izzy Stradlin, like, I'm going to give you exactly what you need for this. I'm just going to fill in the cool on these tracks.
I've always said that he's underrated. The reason is because he doesn't really overplay. He's not a showy guitar player. He's not trying to go out front and show you, look at all these cool licks. He never wastes a note. I've seen him described as. He's kind of spare with it, but he's right on it, right? He gives it exactly what it needs. And he co-wrote a lot of songs with Tom Petty over the years.
Right.
I've seen Tom Petty live, and in later years, he always called Mike Campbell the co-pilot. I mean, that's how together they are and have known each other for, obviously so long. There's this big line of trust there. But Campbell plays great, almost so great that you don't even notice. You do have to almost kind of go pick him out because there's a lot of great. I mean, Tench is great. He puts in a lot of good flavor himself on this, and they can share that kind of same middle ground there. But it's the You Got Lucky video itself. Although I love it now because I love the song. Back in 82, 83, I was like, man, no, play Duran Duran or play Men at Work or Flock of Seagulls or...
Who are these old guys? I don't want any of this. This is terrible.
Yeah,
the other thing I didn't realize is I thought that kind of got rammed down their throat, like it's going to be a post-apocalyptic world that you're in. All right, I guess we'll do this. But apparently, like, Petty really got into it and said, no, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have this concept video, which I guess he would translate again into "Don't Come Around Here." But I would have bet money that it was somebody else that made them do that.
Well, and apparently he didn't like the song much. I mean, they didn't really start to play it live. Maybe they played it on that next tour, but they didn't really play it live again with any regularity till like 2014. So it wasn't one of Tom's favorite songs, I guess. And the video, because it's longer, right? They have like a minute of wind-up with them coming down the road in, I guess, the hover car, although it was, I always saw the wheels on the quote-unquote hover car, even back then.
It was 82. Come on, in a video. Give them a break.
I know. And they walk up and they find the little cassette player or whatever, and they press play, and then the thing starts. So, I don't know, it was extra long. Now I think it's an amazing song. Maybe my favorite Tom Petty song, Jackson, but not my favorite Tom Petty song on the album. Which makes no sense.
That makes no sense.
But that's me, and I'm going to explain my no sense here all in due time.
Okay. Well, let me start at the beginning here, and I've got a problem. I'm raising my hand.
Yes.
I don't like this. I don't like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers because I understand that, like, for instance, the Foo Fighters. Mm-hmm. That's a band, but that's Dave Grohl. Okay, there's no two ways about that. He's driving the bus. I really think saying Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers kind of minimalizes the rest of the guys in the band. These dudes are fantastic. Like you were talking about, Stan Lynch on the drums, and this is the one they picked up, Howie Epstein, and he stayed for a long time. I really feel like these guys really were a band, even though they kind of almost didn't get treated like that with the name. And then there was the whole Full Moon Fever thing. That was a whole nother train wreck that they got into.
Train wreck that sold about 40 million copies or something, Jackson.
Well, but the problem was that was Tom Petty, not Tom Petty and the Heart. So he's like, right. I can do this by myself. And then, let's get back together and let's be a bit. Well, you kind of already burned me with that. So I don't know. I think that he had these guys for a long time. They were definitely part of his signature sound.
Yeah.
and he would have lost a lot constantly interchanging players. So I think the fact that he had these guys for so long really helped him along in his career.
Well, I think Campbell and Tench are actually very good, and could make it in music professionally. Had they not been in the Heartbreakers, had they gone a different route or whatever, they certainly were able to do things away from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers with songwriting and things like that, producing. This was kind of an interesting time for Tom Petty. This is their fifth album together. It's their first. Yeah. It's their first with Howie Epstein. Ron Blair had kind of been with them since the beginning. He left. I think he wanted to get off the road. And for some reason, I feel like it was like a bikini shop, like in Malibu or Venice Beach or, someplace like that. And it's like, being in a place where there's beautiful women everywhere coming in every day to try on skimpy bathing suits. Or I could be on a bus with a bunch of dudes for 6 months of the year and then going back and forth to the studio the other 6 months. Sounds pretty good to me. He actually got Howie from Del Shannon. Del Shannon of My Little Runaway fame, which was like one of my dad's old favorite oldie classics. He would play that when I was like a real little kid. And that got in my head, when I was 3 or 4 or something like that.
They were gonna tap him for the Wilburys.
Yes.
Once Orbison died.
I know. Well, and he didn't know it. So Tom was friends with Del. Tom had got to be friends with all these old classic dudes like Roy and George Harrison and, Del Shannon. He knew everybody. And he wouldn't see Del, and he noticed how good Howie was. And when Ron left, he took him. And Del was pissed because he's like, Tom, you can have anyone you want. Do you have to take Howie? And he's like, Del, I'm taking Howie. And he's like, he got over it, sort of. And then he had the chance to make it up to him. So when Roy died and the Wilburys want to go on, like the next day we were going to see Del to say, we want you to join, to be the new Wilbury. The next day they were going to see him. But Del took his own life that night. Craziness.
All right.
So Del met with a demise there. Tom met with a bit of demise. I never really figured he would go out the way he did, but I did get to see him on that last tour. So glad that I did, because they were always great live, man. They were always great. Anyway, hard times for Tom Petty. He'd gone through a couple of fights, right? He'd gone through the fight where MCA had bought ABC Records, and he's like, you can't just put me on a new record label without my permission. It doesn't just work that way. And so he fought and he held out and he sued and did all that. And then they basically broke up a new little label, Backstreet Records, for Tom Petty, where they got a $3 million, record contract out of that. He fought to get his publishing because he thought, publishing was just songbooks, kind of like Paul McCartney kind of thought that, and maybe the Beatles Get Back. It's like, do they really buy a lot of these songbooks? Is that what publishing is? No, it's not, okay? It's when your music gets played, you get paid. And Petty's like, why? How could this be yours when I wrote it? It came from my mind and heart. You don't just have it because you stuck it out there. So he fought for that. And his previous album to this, Hard Promises, which pictures him in a record store looking through records, they were raising the price of a new record from $8.98 to $9.98. Right? For the superstars, for the Bee Gees, for the big records coming out at the time. And he's like, no, you're ripping off the fans on my name. And you're not doing that. And he got in a fight. So much so, he almost called the record $8.98. So that's what people would pay for it, right? So he's been in a few fights, good fights in his own favor, good fights on the side of artists and songwriters. But that kind of stuff can wear you down, especially when you're doing an album a year and a couple of tours a year.
Yeah, and I think that's what we kind of forget about now is even at that point in time, there was no big layoff for these guys. I mean, it was literally either you were in the studio, making the record, on the road, and then, back into it again. So, yeah, I can imagine that it just wears on you after a while, especially when you're having to come up with original material. And no offense to the rest of the guys in the band, it's just Petty and then some Mike Campbell. But, I mean, the heavy lifting is all on him. Right,
yeah, for sure. Plus, they're not – I mean, they may sell millions, but this isn't Full Moon Fever or the Greatest Hits album. They're not selling 10, 20, 30 million of these. They're selling a million, couple million. This one, Long After Dark, apparently still hasn't gone platinum. It's a gold record, but apparently still isn't platinum. In America, maybe it sold over 1 million worldwide. But that's kind of interesting to me. I would figure at this point all of the old Heartbreakers records would be platinum.
Yeah, especially since his death, I would have thought, yeah, you're right. People would have just gone back and filled in the album sales, but I guess not.
Yeah, I got it. I got it years back. I mean, when we were going to see Tom Petty, God, it might have been on the last tour. And I decided, I wanted to get some of his old records to have them in the collection and re-listen to some, because so much of the time these days, an artist like that, yeah, their big hit records may still go for $12 or $15 on Amazon or something like that. But some of those ones that only went gold or whatever, you can get them for $5. And I remember picking up like 4 out of his first 5 records for like $20 or something like that on Amazon, this one included. And then listening through it, it's like, yeah, you got lucky. It's so much more poignant today, just because when I was 9 or whenever it came out, I didn't know anything about relationships,
Right.
And it's like, that's not Rio, she's not dancing on the sand. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear a happy song, But now it's like, live a little bit and like some of the world might open up for you.
Right. And then you listen and you say, oh, now I see what he's saying. But I can see why he didn't like that, because it doesn't sound like anything else on this record.
Yeah. Or much else in the catalog. And, you think about it. I mean, I think the first side of the record is great. I think the second side is a little weak. And he got into a little bit of a rut, it would seem, after this, right? Because they did basically an album a year for 5 years, 6 years, something like that. And then they didn't put out Southern Accents until 1985. They did some collaborations, and he's working with Stevie on some stuff, but still, I feel like there was a little bit of burnout here. And most of this album is like breakup songs, right?
And hard times, and kind of the working man blues.
Yeah, exactly. And I think some of this fighting the record company to get his own label, fighting to be in charge of his own music, fighting to set the price of his music, all this legal stuff that's not playing and making music, that'll burn you out, man.
Yeah. And especially if you're trying to fight a record company, I mean, they've done this a million times. They've got lawyers, on retainer. They can fight you very easily. And if you're one guy, that's got to be tough, because you feel like I'm sure there were other artists who were like, yeah, go ahead and do that. All right, well, I guess I'll do it by myself. Kind of the whole Lars Ulrich thing with Napster, and this guy's such a jerk, blah blah blah. And everyone's like, yeah, he's totally right. Okay, well, thanks for letting me stand there by myself and get pelted with rocks, jerks.
Hey guys, this is Ryan Condal, the executive producer, writer, creator of House of the Dragon, and you're listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London podcast, and you should download and subscribe. Keep doing that.
So you want to start at the beginning here?
All right. So, Long After Dark, produced by Jimmy Iovine, who I guess they've been working with for a little while now.
That's what it looks like, yeah, because I went back and looked through there. I'm like, oh, this is no, he's been there for a while. So that's a pretty heavy hitter you've got there in the studio with you.
My favorite story from Jimmy Iovine with the Heartbreakers was it Scorsese? I think they did like a 4 or 6 hour documentary on Tom Petty that's probably at least 15 years old by now.
Okay.
Maybe a little older than that. Really in depth, kind of went through the years and all the different things he'd done, all the people he worked with, all the ups and downs. And he's like, Jimmy's from New York, and he's like pushy, let's go. We're from the South. We come in, we smoke a joint, we pass around. It's like, you want to do that bird song kind of song we're doing? Like, yeah, let's do some of that. Maybe we can. Whereas Jimmy walks in, hey guys, you ready to go? You were working on something yesterday. You want to finish that? Let's go ahead and finish this one up, guys, and then we can work on the one that Tommy was. And he's like, whoa, dude, you need to chill out. Those are worlds colliding right there. But, that friction gets you some good stuff over the years. I mean, you can't deny his few albums before this, as far as You're Gonna Get It. Hard Promises was right before this. What was the one in the middle there? Damn Torpedoes was a good one for him. So, along with the debut. So they've been building on some stuff here now. Jimmy's part of the team now. So I guess there were some high expectations that maybe weren't met with this album. But I don't know. I think it's a great Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers record.
Yeah, and I guess it came out really, really close to the one before this, to Hard Promises. And so I think that what I was reading, people were saying, well, how can this be? Why would you do this? like, how could you have enough new material for this? So I think there was a little bit of trepidation as far as what are we really going to get out of it. It doesn't really sound a whole bunch different than Hard Promises, but I mean, I think overall it works.
Yeah, well, it was probably due to it got delayed, kept getting delayed because of the fight with the record company over the price, Hard Promises, right? And they got pushed back. In the meantime, we've got new music to put out, right? We continue to record, continue to do our thing, because that's what we have to do as a band is make a new record every year. So yeah, you may want to push back Hard Promises all you want. Fine, then it finally gets out, we get some hits out of it. Now we're following it up with Long After Dark. And I just feel like even the title's like, it sounds like they're a little tired. Like, we've been doing this a long time now, and now we've been burning the candle both ends where we're fighting all day in court and we're staying up all night to party and record and tour and everything. And so it's not just like once the sun sets. This is going on long after dark. And, in the 70s and 80s when you're staying up long after dark, what's going on? What's going up your nose?
It could be anything. Who knows? Yeah, and then that that goes back to and I was thinking about this in the Beatles documentary too. The difference between the artists who want to go in there and fool around a little bit, make art, and then the people who are the production guys who are under deadlines we need to get this finished now. And now okay, we've wasted half a day fooling around and telling stories and starting to get itchy here. Yeah, how do you? And then I guess that's the thing about the producer is how do you kind of guide them into doing what you need to do without making them say, well, forget it, and walking out of the place and not coming back.
Right. How do you be the boss when really you work for them? It's a fine line,
It's almost like you're a school teacher or something, or a principal. You don't want to scold them too hard, but you need them to perform. And I'm sure they're getting calls from the record companies every day, like this. Every hour that you're in there costs us X number of thousands of dollars. What did you get done today? Well, they came in late and they fooled around a little bit, and then we broke it for lunch, and that was pretty much it. No, wrong answer.
Wrong answer.
So yeah.
Yeah, let's get into it. Then afterwards, we can get into how we consumed Tom Petty when we were in college.
All right.
Together. All right, start us off. One Story Town, Jackson.
This is, I think it's a good track to start off with. It almost had a little tiny bit of Beatles at the beginning, kind of that's what I heard. It's a good straight ahead rocker, kind of the working man lost in a one-story town. I've been kicked around my whole life. I like it. I mean, I think it's a good way to start. We've talked about this several different times. You got to kind of set the tone at the beginning of the record. And I think this does a pretty good job of telling you what's going on here. It's going to be what you expect from Tom Petty, and not too much, but just enough on this first one.
Yeah, look, it's got great Tom Petty lyrics that can usually mean a couple of different things, right? So yeah, you're talking about a one-story town, which is literally like everything's one floor because it's a tiny place and it's a place dream to get out of. But it's also everyone's got the same story. Like, I was born here, I lived and worked here, I'm gonna die here. Like, that's everybody's story. And it's like, you've got bigger dreams than that, right? So you've got to get out of there because it's where the same shit goes down and nothing turns around, right? You don't grow. It's the same here every day of every year. Some people love that, but there's some people who need more. And, I do feel like I hear a little bit of almost a new wavy guitar underneath it. Boom. You can kind of hear it under his singing on it. So that's kind of a step in a bit of a different direction maybe. Or, they weren't new wave, but they were coming up during the time of new wave. So they had to have been hearing it on the radio and seeing it out on the road. So. Yeah,
I mean, they were definitely contemporaries of the Cars.
Right.
And so I wonder, and then the Cars were American as Tom Petty was. I wondered too about
Boston.
I mean, you went, out of Boston. I wonder if some of this is Gainesville. Gainesville, especially. It's a college town. It's got a lot of stuff in it. But if you don't go to college there, I could see how you would think this was a one-story town. Like, I got to get out of here. It's in the middle of nowhere in the state of Florida. He's had bigger dreams. I'm out.
Now, look, as a proud graduate of the University of Florida, who spent a couple of years living there, okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the college is great. It's an amazing university. They have all sorts of amazing facilities. You get 10 minutes outside of Gainesville, man. I mean, you are in a swamp. You are in Florida, but you are not near the beach, and there's nothing out there, man. Hunting and fishing and not having to deal with anybody you don't want to, I guess. Tom Petty had a real problem with his father, who was kind of like that. You know, he needed to get away from him as much as he needed to get away from the fact that, you know, there's nothing going on there. So he went and took guitar lessons in town from a guy named Don Felder, who ended up having a bit of a career in rock and roll himself.
Yeah, I think I've heard of him before.
Yeah, and managed to get his way out. But no, you're right, though. See, this is setting the tone that it's a good little rocker, so you know musically, sonically what it's going to be. But it's also going to be about, you know, this is about getting through some of the hardships of life here. You're not born on third base. You got to get out there and get up at the plate.
Right.
And then comes You Got Lucky, man. The big hit off this one.
Okay, but hold on a minute here. If you're Joe Public and you say, you know what, I really like Tom Petty. I liked his stuff before. The album's brand new. I'm going to go ahead and buy it. You put it on. The first time would you say, what is this? What is he doing here? Because this is a real hard left turn. I mean, now, obviously, it's a big hit. They had a huge video. We get this 30, 40 years later.
Yeah.
But I can imagine on first hearing this, you would say, I don't know what this is. It's weird. It's got that piano part to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really dark when you listen to the lyrics. You know, you got lucky when you found me. When I found you. It's like, oh. But I mean, I think it's aged really well. But I would really be interested to see people's first take on this back in '82. Like, oof, what is this?
And my first take as a 9-year-old, right?
Okay.
Didn't like it. Didn't like it at all because I didn't understand the Mature Thieves. You Got Lucky. I'm watching the video more than I'm really hearing the music, probably. And look, I don't know anyone who says Tom Petty is a great looking rock star. I thought he was not that good looking of a guy. I'm like, why is he on TV kind of thing? And you know, and then he was bashing. You know, at the end he knocked over a video game. Well, damn it, I love video games back in the day. Right? At 9 years old, man, you could see me playing Tron for hours. You know, so. So I'm like, yeah, the whole thing. And like I said, you know, there's like a minute of it where there's not even a song, you know, where they're kind of setting up the video, which makes it long, which takes longer to get to whatever I wanted to see, the Vapors or Blondie or whatever was on, you know. As a 9-year-old, they could playing Beat It next, but they're playing this damn thing again, you know.
Well, I guess I'll go get something to eat or whatever. This will be on for a couple minutes.
I think it was overplayed. I think I was sick one day and I watched like 8 hours of MTV while everybody was at work. And I saw it like 5 times. Like, I can't believe they're playing this again, you know. But yeah, honestly, I saw him play it live, and I'm so glad I did. Obviously, everyone's been through breakups, but this is not one that's like, hey, I'm sorry it didn't work out, or, you know, you deserve better, or something like that. It's like, yeah, all right, I'm not it, fine, go. Just go, okay?
Right.
But you got lucky, babe. And I'm like, damn, that's good stuff right there, man.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
I'm not worried about it. Yeah, you'll find the error of your ways. But I think the Campbell's guitar work on this, like the solo part, again, just enough to what you need. Not real flashy, but yeah, exactly.
But no, not flashy. God, you could play that after 2 guitar lessons if you had the tablature, man. I mean, that's not real hard to do. But it's awesome. I mean, it's perfect for the song. And Ben Montench is in there real good, I thought, on that. Because, yeah, you hear those keyboards and the piano, the synths, and there's like, well, that is different. But that's, you know, that's Ben Mont. He's really good, you know. So to this, I love the song. It is hard for me it might be my favorite Tom Petty song ever, which is unbelievable, given how it started out.
Yeah, I think it definitely has aged well. And I'm glad that they put it on here. I'm glad that they took a chance. Because this could, I think, easily have been one that maybe you would have gotten on the 40th anniversary. Oh, here's a track we didn't use. You know, a little bonus. Wait, why didn't you ever put that out? So I'm glad that whoever talked him into it did it. And I mean, I don't know, maybe it was Mike Campbell because he co-wrote it. Who knows?
Who knows? Or Jimmy heard it like that's the one. I mean, you know, I don't know.
And I think that's the other thing too. And we've talked about that before. The other thing with the producer is picking through this and saying, no,
where's the
this
hit?
is, right. Except unless you're Steven Tyler and then you think everyone's a hit and you want every single song to be released as a single track. But yeah, whoever did it, thank you.
Yeah, no, great one. All right, so you move on then to Deliver Me. Obviously some maybe religious overtones to that, but again, the melody is good. There's good Ben Mont on here. The guitar parts aren't my favorites as far as the riff goes, but it still sounds like good Tom Petty. I don't know, and it sounds like it's about redemption to me.
Yeah, and it feels like, okay, so we're on the road, and we kind of got off on the exit with, you got like, okay, now we're back on. This is another, kind of straight ahead sounding song. Yeah, there's the bass and the piano are nice at the beginning. This is kind of like, I think even if you'd never heard this song before and you put it on, you say, oh, that's Tom Petty. Like, that's his sound, his kind of signature on this one. Yeah, again, deliver me. What are we talking about? Deliver me from what? Again, kind of giving a vague idea out there that people can relate to.
Right.
Kind of fill in what you want to from this song.
Exactly. You talk about being delivered to a place. You're talking about delivering yourself from evil.
Yeah.
Talking about overcoming your hardships to live, with the life you want. Who knows? But see, that's why I think that's why he gets so much attention, because he really is a great songwriter. I'm talking about lyrics. Obviously, you and I are more about the rhythm of the track, the melody of the track, the guitar work, right? Like, what's the music of it? And then you want to put some good lyrics over it. That's cool. Or something catchy we can all sing along to. That makes a great song. I wasn't someone who always, I don't know, if they had the lyrics, I would read them if I got them in a cassette. I never had this one until I was much older. So it takes a little bit of maturity to really understand a lot of the relationship kind of stuff, exactly what they're saying in some of these. And that's why maybe it wasn't doing that well in 82 when stuff that came out and grabbed you visually and were earworms, that was bigger in 82. But this is really good rock and roll on this.
Yeah, I think that You Got Lucky was the only video they made. And so I think that probably kind of in 1982 hurt them, because that popular music was moving toward the visual medium. Right. So yeah, it's too bad, but that's where we are.
All right, well, speaking of it's too bad. So you go to the next song, Change of Heart.
Yes.
This was a single. I do not remember it ever hearing it back in the day. And like you say, there was no video. So it did not do as well as You Got Lucky. So to my knowledge, I'd never heard this song before I bought the record 6, 7 years, whatever that was. And then I heard that song, and I'm like, that is a hit song. That's a hit Tom Petty song. And I rewound it. I played it a few more times. I'm like, damn, I can't believe they didn't release this. And then I went and looked it up. They did release it. And I'm like, okay. But I never heard it. So I still found it, right? Is the way I looked at it. But then I always wondered, or did I? Did I hear it on the radio once and it got into my ear and I never knew who it was? And then when I heard it 40 years later or whenever that was, am I remembering, oh my God, that's it? I think I heard it for the first time like 6 years ago when I bought a record. But I think it's an awesome Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers song.
That happens to me from time to time. There'll be like one line or something, and I'm like, wait, what's that song? Who sings that? What? I can't even remember. You're trying to remember the rest of it from the one, and then you hear it just randomly. That's it. Yeah. Again, who knows? But why was this not bigger? Why was this not
no video? You said it, man.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. And who knows? Maybe they for the first one, they spent so much time and money on that.
Right.
They just said, hey, we only have one. We only have the budget for one of these things. So sorry.
Right. And it's right on the heel of Hard Promises, as you said. They did make, I think, the first 100,000 copies of the single in red vinyl, which I would like to have. That would be cool. Nice. So that's neat. Yeah. It was shocking to me. It's like, it's so Tom Petty. It's got like the organ in it that's very Ben. I mean, it just sounds so much like them. And I'm like, this is obviously a really good song. It doesn't really have a solo in it. I mean, but it just shocked me. But now I'm curious. Because I knew for sure when I bought it and I listened to it, like, I never heard this song before. And this is a hit song. And then, doing research, I'm like, well, they did release it. So there is the chance that I heard it on the radio sometime. So I just wonder if maybe it got in there. And I just didn't realize it.
Although that is a lot of fun, though, when you go through these records and you find a song that you really like that you haven't heard before or haven't heard in a long time. And it's one of the things that I don't like now with the Spotify and everything else, where you can just listen to one song. This was back in the day when you just put the record on and let it play.
Right. That's right. And you would find all these great songs. You only get one or two. Maybe get 2 singles, maybe 3 if they do well. There's going to be 10 songs on a record, though, right? So
Mm-hmm. And especially if you paid your $8.99 or $9.99, you were going to listen to the whole thing.
Well, that's right. That's for sure. They wrap up side one with Finding Out, which is a good way to wrap up a side. It sounds like Howie is stepping forward a little bit with his background vocals here. But it's another song about moving on, right?
Right. I got a very Stones vibe at the beginning of this. It just sounds like something that they would have played. I can't imagine that Tom Petty and Mike Campbell and everybody else in the band is not a huge Rolling Stones fan.
Right.
There was no way. And it's kind of like, you just channel that inner Keith Richards when you're doing the beginning riff of this thing. And yeah, you're right. There is a nice call and repeat from, Tom, I'm fine, and then I'm finding out, the back and forth there. That's pretty cool. This is one, it's a little more raw, I think.
Yeah, it's a good rocker.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. A nice track to put in there now. You kind of step it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Because the change of heart, it's not a slow song. It's not a ballad. It's kind of a mid-tempo with some good rhythm to it, I feel like. But Finding Out, stepping back out like, I'm going to find out what else is out there. Here's the thing. He was married to the same woman, so I don't know. A lot of these songs sound like breakup songs to me. But it could be that he's breaking up with his own record company. He could be breaking up with, I don't want to live in Gainesville, Florida. I'm living in Santa Monica, whatever. It doesn't just have to be about, but that's, I guess, the universal way to communicate it, is make it sound like it's a relationship with your woman.
Right. And I mean, and who knows too, it's a weird lifestyle, because, you're at home for a little while, but you're in the studio, and then you go out for months at a time,
right,
pretty much by yourself. And, things go on, you see things that are crazy.
Right.
I'm not saying he ever partook in anything outside of the marriage, but I mean, I'm sure the opportunity was there, no problem.
Yeah, it's not an easy life. I mean, it can be fun, but I mean, it depends on what you want, I guess, and depends on how you handle it.
Correct.
But, I mean, I can't imagine doing it at this age. We're almost 50, and they did it into their 60s. I mean,
Well. Yeah, I mean, hopefully the older you get, the more luxurious the experience would be.
No doubt.
Now we're not driving in a van with everybody. You get more. So yeah, but I mean, even still, that is who was talking about it? Somebody like, I don't know, Jay Moore or something. I couldn't tell you, but he said he was staying at a hotel in Boston. He gets up in the morning, real fancy high end place. And there's Mick Jagger. He's in there. And he's like, it's 6 a.m. and Jagger is in there working out, stretching, doing his whole thing. It is a full-time job, especially when you get to be, later on in life, these guys really have committed to.
Yeah.
We're going in whole hog. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, I don't want to get up now and, work out, but
I know.
Let alone in 20 years.
Yeah. But so that wraps side one. And I got to tell you, that's like the best, most solid side one of an album I feel like I've heard in a while, And technically I never had it on cassette or LP. I only had it on CD. But this is the way they made the things back then. They arranged it so they would have certain starts and ebbs and flows, and things fit together in a certain way. And side one, on Long After Dark, my favorite side one that I've heard in a long time.
Okay. And they knew too, no matter what, especially on the record, on the tape too, you were going to have to physically switch it over, so there would be a gap. There's just no way.
Right.
So yeah, that's a good way to end it, and then flip it over, and then we get ready for side 2.
And side 2 is different. It's pretty much all rockers on side 1, right?
Yeah.
Side 2 is different, and it starts with "We Stand a Chance," which is different. I mean, it's got a little more of a groove to it than a rockin' thing to it, and it's more of a song of hope than it is you got lucky, babe, or or I'm finding out what else is out there. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's a little different than the first side, that's for sure.
And I wonder too, I wrote down there's like clapping in the background. How do you come up with that? I mean, okay, we've got guitar, we got bass, we got drums, we got piano, keyboard. Okay, cool. I think we're going to put some clapping on this one. What? All right, it works. It's a cool little change of pace. I just wonder how people come up with that.
Yeah, maybe it's Jimmy. Who knows? Or maybe Tom's like, we need something a little sharper than a drum. So we get a clap. Who knows? It's a little bit of a down dirty song. I didn't realize that Tom actually plays lead guitar on this tune.
Okay.
It's a little different, but maybe that's because he worked it out that way, right? I mean, Campbell had written the previous one, Finding Out, co-wrote it along with You Got Lucky on the first side, but this is that's Tom on himself. By himself on We Stand a Chance, so I guess he kind of maybe put the whole thing together there. But good tune, but it's different.
And I think that sometimes, too, that's what you need when you've got the same people playing the same instruments, doing the same thing. Sometimes you get kind of in I don't want to say a rut, but you kind of get in the same vibe the whole time. So when you switch it up, like, how we always say we like the Keith songs because it's just a different feel to it. So maybe that's what it is. Hey, this isn't working. Let me try playing lead on this and see how it sounds. Oh, all right. For this song, it works.
Yep. I'm down with that. Yep. You're right. And then it moves straight into Darkness. Now, I think this might have even been like some kind of a release. Maybe on the album. Am I right about that?
I find it interesting that it's called Long After Dark, but there is no Long After Dark song because a lot of times they have that on there but this is kind of like straight into darkness. So is that part of are we doing a theme here or what's going on?
Well, I guess maybe this was a radio hit or something, or this was a promo pressing. Hit is not the right word, but it's like
single.
Yeah, they don't have a release date on it. They just say 1982. Whereas they know, Change of Heart was released in February of '83, and You Got Lucky was October of '82. But again, this is a song this is a weird one in that it seems to be about a relationship. But, there's some lines like I remember flying out of London. The UK really did help them launch. I mean, they were on like the old grey whistle test, and they did better over here at first in the late 70s than they did in the US. And then it was with a little support from British fans that they actually had to come back and pick up some steam in America. But I don't know. It's kind of weird that the song's about, it's like he's like saying, I don't see a future here, or I don't feel the love here. But then it's like, but I still think we should hang out and maybe hook up. I don't know. It's kind of a weird song to me. And I guess Ron Blair actually played on this one. So this was probably left over from the Hard Promises sessions or something like that.
Yeah, this is kind of more of a lonely sound or a lonely theme in this one. Just kind of like, you're going into the unknown. You don't know what's going on. I'm always a big fan of the cowbell. There's a little bit of that in the background. Yeah. And then you kind of got that piano bridge in the middle. That doesn't sound like anything else they've done before on this record either. Yeah,
no, the guitar and the piano have some good interplay here, a little back and forth there. So, no, I agree with you there. So I think the lyrics are a little bit odd. I think the song is not bad at all. And, obviously they kept Ron's bit because, they got it right. So maybe it was, I don't know, maybe it was because they did have it left over from Hard Promises. Maybe it was a between single, right? That they came out between Hard Promises and the release of, and I don't know, perhaps. I'd never heard it before I bought the record either. But then, to me, now we're really it's not that we're making a turn. To me, these next two songs just don't stand out to me. It's like they're jams they had that got some shape to them, and they're like, okay, we can put words over that, right? I mean, the Same Old You is a little bit of a click there to start. I think everyone comes in clearly. It's produced well, and that you can hear everyone individually. It's not muddled or anything, but for whatever reason, I just don't like this one very much.
It's not because I was looking at the notes I've got here. The song doesn't really stand out, but I kind of like the message in it. You can do whatever you want, but I know who you are. You can put on different clothes. You can have a different job, but deep down inside, it's the same old you. Come on now. So that's what I like about this. I think that this is another, like, you can hear this at a bar, from a band, and just sit there and groove to it. Yeah, I mean, once you get to the back side of the second, or the back end of the second side, you kind of think that maybe some of these are just like, oh, we can't put out an album with 7 songs on it.
Right.
Okay, maybe we have this. Here you go, put this in there.
Right. And Between Two Worlds, to me, is kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was the B-side to You Got Lucky. So, I mean, generally speaking, like, if You Got Lucky is going to be the big hit single, then on the B-side of that, you put the song that's like the worst song, right? Right? I mean, seriously, like, you don't want to give them 2 A-sides. And The Same Old You and Between Both Worlds, or Between Two Worlds, were both co-writes Petty Campbell. So if the single's Petty and Campbell, let's put a B-side Petty Campbell. And it's long, it's over 5 minutes. Like, whereas the first 8 songs of the album are basically all between 3 and 3.5 minutes. They're kind of right in the pocket, perfect rock radio, AOR kind of length right there. This is the longest. And again, it doesn't stand out to me. It's kind of like we're kind of getting to the end here and they're just throwing on what they need to.
To me, this one sounded like they were kind of, to me, the lyrics are more just because you need them to have an actual song.
Right.
Really, this is more about, it's kind of a jam. And then the music sounds really good. And then it's like, hey, do we have lyrics for this? Yeah, give me a minute and I'll put something together. Whereas on some of these, on the earlier songs, it sounds like his lyrics are more like a message, like that's kind of driving the bus. This is more like it takes a back seat to the actual what they're playing music wise.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, I think both these songs were built out of jams, and they were shaped into something, but maybe they're shaped into enough. Like if Jimmy's like, I got 8 good songs, I just need 2 more. Let's work on this thing. Okay, that's good enough, right? Because we don't need. This isn't going to be Thriller. We're not going to have 9 hit singles or whatever. 7 or 8 is crazy. But no, it's we get our 3 or 4 hits and we fill out the rest of it. I don't know. That's just the way I'm hearing it. But that said, I do think they finish well with Wasted Life, which is a little different again. This is like a bit of a country song a little bit to it, but not like a traditional twangy country song. I don't know. It sounds like they've got some congos, bongos, which could be this Phil Jones guy, but you can hear the brushes on it. It's kind of a sweet ending to the record.
It's definitely a different deal. I'm glad they put this last because it kind of just floats you out. Yeah, it's more dreamy. I don't know. There's something going on in the back, like a synth or something. Mm-hmm. It's got a nice bass groove to it. This doesn't sound like anything else on the record. I'm glad they put it on there because I do like a little change of pace, and I kind of like the sentiment too of a wasted life. Are we now back to you got to get out of wherever you are? Mm-hmm. And I don't want to come back here in 20 years and have you still be in this town or doing this thing. You've got bigger aspirations. Yeah, you've got more ambition and talent to be stuck here.
Exactly. I mean, what kind of life do you really want to lead? And again, it could be twofold. I mean, you want to just get loaded all the time because you could be living a rock and roll life, make a lot of money. But if you're loaded, is that really the way you want? Or is it you want to sit in that small town and just marry the first girl you knock up and then take the first job that'll hire you, and is that really what you want, So, it can mean a few different things. I've seen it on a couple of lists of hidden gems in the Tom Petty catalog or, you see a top 50 list or something like that. It'll find its way in there a lot. So, for the hardcore fans, they know this one. And I think it's a good one. And look, the first side, straight rockers, and they all fit together well. They all sound good. Although there's some differences in there. And then the second side starts off with a little bit of a different song. Straight Into Darkness is kind of more, their thing. Couple of jams, which, kind of have some shape to it. But then you wind up with this, and it just kind of shows, we're growing, and it's not easy. Yeah, right. But we don't want to do the same shit over and over again. So that's why we're stretching to do these different things.
Yeah, it is a nice change of pace. And then again, this is why you listen to the whole record, because you're going to find something like this that you would not do. You probably normally just, what are the big hits off of this? Okay, I'll just listen to that. I'm glad they put it on there because it just shows that they can do other things.
Exactly. So, I mean, the second side is not my favorite, although it's got some good stuff on it. But the first side to me, killer old album. I can't believe it's 40 years old. I can't believe 1982 was 40 years ago. Probably going to say that a few more times on the show this year would be my guess.
Correct. Now, you said that's your favorite song. You Got Lucky's your favorite Tom Petty song, but not your favorite song off the record. What is your favorite song off the record?
Change of Heart.
Okay.
Because I discovered it, damn it.
Yeah, and that is great. That is great because you've heard the singles a million times. There's nothing better than, and then you think to yourself, how did everybody else miss this but me? This is a great track.
I know.
Yeah, I love that. The hidden gems, or going. I guess it was released as a single. It's not really hidden, but just going back and finding something, a new song or new to you that you haven't heard before.
Right. Yeah, and I bet if I played that song for 10 buddies, you included, right, a week ago, and said, listen to this song, you know this song? And you would figure out that it was Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. You'd hear that, it's like, oh, this is Tom Petty. But when did he do this? Because you didn't know the song, and I didn't know the song before I bought it, and most people don't. I'm telling you. There's some people who would remember it, and there's a bunch of hardcore Tom Petty fans, of course. But no, that to me is my favorite on the record. And yes, I want to find the red vinyl single one day.
Yeah, the thing that's really too bad about this record is that in what was it? When did Full Moon Fever come out? Like 89 or 90, right. Something like that.
I think
that went nuclear.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, a lot of this old catalog stuff got pushed out of the way, except for the hits.
Right.
Because everybody wanted to hear the new stuff. And then they did Into the Great Wide Open, which was another big hit record for them. So then it gets even farther pushed out, and that's just the way it goes.
Right. And so that's what I wanted to touch on afterwards. So you and I, at least I was introduced to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers with You Got Lucky and the video, basically, which at the time I didn't like. I knew Refugee, and I kind of liked that one, but I never saw that video, and I was a child of the video age. And then, to come around Here No More, I didn't love the song because you couldn't really tap your toe to it. Plus, the video was shoved down my throat like, this is video of the year. You're going to love this. You're going to watch it. I'm like, okay, it's fine, I guess. Jesus, leave me alone. I don't have to like it. But then, Tom got on a roll because the Traveling Wilburys were cool as hell as far as I was concerned. Right. Like, wow, that's a really neat supergroup. Yeah. I had their first record. And then Full Moon Fever, the first Tom Petty album, comes out, although it's got George all over it, Jeff Lynne all over it, and Mike Campbell helped write a lot of songs. Ringo, I think, played some. He's getting his profile's going huge. Full Moon Fever has 6 hits or something like that. It's crazy. It wouldn't go away. And then, it was our freshman year in college, if I'm not mistaken, that Into the Great Wide Open came out, back now with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And then it was our sophomore year when the Greatest Hits record came out and Mary Jane's Last Dance. Remember that?
Yeah.
Because I had it.
That was a huge... Yeah,
we didn't.
And that's a great track.
It is, and Tom was way against it. Of course, it's maybe one of the times he was wrong and like fighting his record company. It's like, okay, you're doing a greatest hits album, and we need a couple of new songs. And he's like, how can you call them hits when I haven't even written it yet? You don't know if it's a hit. And he's like, that greatest hits. See, that's how they get the hardcore fans because greatest hits packages are rip-offs anyway because they're really just for the casual fans. But then you kind of milk the hardcore fans into getting them, and the ones who won't because they already have all the records anyway, okay, well, you put 2 new tracks on there, and now they're compelled to go buy it. But thanks to that video with Kim Basinger, that's like one of the greatest selling greatest hits albums of all time. I mean, it's huge.
And that's it's just a cool song too. Even minus the video, it's got a really cool riff at the beginning. It's kind of like a dirty, nasty intro to it. And the other thing too is, you remember we were friends with gentlemen from Indiana, and we're super excited about the Indiana references and shout outs in that song.
No, man, I've seen Tom Petty in Indiana twice, and he played that both times. And let me tell you something, son. When they say, with them Indiana boys on them Indiana nights, whoa, does the place blow up, man. Woo! Oh, man. They are some happy Hoosiers in that moment, I'll tell you that. You betcha.
He knows how to play to the crowd.
He does.
Well, it's interesting, too, because now I'm looking at this. So the Wilburys were 88. But Harrison's Cloud 9 came out in 87 with I've Got My Mind Set on You.
Right.
So for him to get hooked up with them at that time, everything was just locking into place.
Yeah.
And
didn't he write Roy's Everything You Want? You Got It? Isn't that a Tom Petty song?
It might be, yeah. But then that was another big record too.
Right.
Roy Orbison was coming back, so yeah, everything was just firing all cylinders. Yeah, it was weird that late '80s time period was just everybody came back from the '60s, '70s.
The '60s were big time in the late '80s. Yeah. Everything 20 years ago. Because it was 20 years ago today. Oh, it's been 20 years since they said it was 20 years ago. Woodstock got popular again, and The Who,
right.
the Stones, Pink Floyd all did huge tours in that 87, 88, 89 time. Yeah, absolutely. It was big again. And yeah, Tom was hooked up with all these guys, and he had the golden touch, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, So yeah, but again, unfortunately, when you get these big new songs out, you can't play for 4.5 hours. Right. So something's got to get pushed out. And I was always I think that was the time too, yeah, where I went back and kind of discovered him. Like, oh, hey, he's got a lot of good catalog stuff from back in the day that I kind of. So after Don't Come Around Here No More, he really didn't have too many big like MTV hits until Full Moon Fever, because like Free Falling, that he was back big.
There was You Got Lucky, and then there was I don't think Southern Accents did that well, but it was the Don't Come Around Here No More was a big MTV hit.
Right.
Was that 87? That was that was later.
Something like that, yeah. But then there was a gap. I know he put out like Let Me Up, I've Had Enough, but I don't think that and that had some hits on it, but I don't think anything that was real mainstream. But if I remember correctly, Full Moon Fever was very mainstream.
Couldn't have been
Free
bigger.
Fall was all over rock radio.
Couldn't have been bigger. That You're So Bad song, I think, was the 6th hit off of it. I'm like, God, this is like, it won't go. It was like Hysteria. It's like they just keep putting hit after hit after hit off of it, and it wouldn't go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I did. So Stan Lynch was with them for a long time, came with them from Gainesville. It was around that time of Full Moon Fever that there started to be some problems, because like Howie was like, came in one day. He's like, I don't want to play this song. This song sucks, and I'm not going to play on it. He's like, okay, well, that's okay, Howie. If you don't want to play on it, you don't have to. Yeah, fine. He left. And that was Free Fallin'. And, like Stan was like, Stan, we need you to come and do this. He's like in Gainesville. He's, no, man, I'm partying. I don't want to do this. No, you can't make me. He's like, okay, well, I got Ringo ready to go. So if you're not going to be here, we'll just use Ringo. Magically, Stan was on a flight there the next day, But eventually he did kind of retire. And Steve Ferrone, who had played with Eric Clapton, who won Young Wolf, did catch his drumstick when seeing Clapton in the third row on the Journeyman tour. He was in the Heartbreakers for a long time after that. But that's when Howie, I think, was starting to have some drug problems. And eventually, he did succumb to heroin, Howie. And he looked really bad at the end of his life. Like, wow, he was in nasty, bad shape. But they all went through some difficult times with substances. I mean, I think all the guys did. But it was, I don't know, it was interesting because they couldn't have been huger then, right? When we were in college, I mean, he has a huge solo album. They come back with a nice Heartbreakers album, the greatest hits albums, through the roof, enormous. And now he's settled in. All right, he's one of the biggest rock stars of all time now. And that can affect the people around you. And I think it did.
Well, I mean, again, it's, it comes back to, I think it's Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And then so guys like, Stan Lynch, when you want to kind of say, well, I want to do this, then no, either you do it this way or you're not doing it. And yeah, I can find somebody to come and play the drums for you.
Right.
So, and I know that was a big deal when he did the solo record, and then they did the following tour with Into the Great Wide Open, and they're going to play Free Fall. It's like, wait a minute. What are we doing here? So you're just saying that you can do whatever you want. You can replace us and then bring us back. And yeah, I think it just got to be a mess at that point in time.
I know. But then when I saw him live finally, Jackson, it was great. I mean, like, oh yeah, I've always wanted to see Tom Petty. I was supposed to see him in Louisville once, and he had to cancel about 5 dates because of an illness or something, and they never rescheduled those 5 dates. And so I lost my chance to see him there. Eventually came to Indianapolis right before 4th of July one year, and Steve Winwood opened for him. And Steve Winwood was so awesome because I wanted to see him, and I saw his whole thing. It was just amazing because he can do Dear Mr. Fantasy, but he also do Give Me Some Lovin', but he also do Presence in the Lord, but he can, he can do solo stuff. So I'm like, wow, his catalog's great. So then we went ahead and bought tickets to see Tom Petty again 6 nights later in Cincinnati because we wanted to see Steve Winwood again, So it was like, wow, that was amazing. That was cool. And then I saw him one more time in Indianapolis, Joe Walsh as a solo artist opening for him this time, which turned out to be his last tour, which makes me a little upset because we left a little early because we were tailgating a lot in the parking lot that day. And when it got past halfway through the set, I'm like, I think I need to sober up and get out of here. My wife.
I don't think I'm going to make it.
Yeah, my wife was like, I've seen Tom Petty. We can go. And I'm like, okay, all right, that's a good idea. Let's go. Which maybe not. Maybe I should have watched every single song he played. Obviously, if you knew that, you would act differently. But I am glad to see it. His death was a surprise to me because it wasn't like he was sick or anything. And I guess it was a cocktail of the different pain medicine that he'd been on, which is what's happened to hundreds of thousands of people in our country, right?
And the thing that really bummed me out about that was it seemed like, to me, he was doing that because he didn't want to take time off. He was in a lot of pain taking these pain pills, but he didn't want to cancel the shows. He was doing it for the fans, and it ended up taking his life. So if he had taken time off, would have been different. I don't know, but it's just that mentality of I don't want to disappoint the fans breaks my heart.
Well, yeah, and he said it's the last big tour. It's not like we're never going to play again. They could have done residencies. They could have continued to make records. They could show up and do festivals or do a big show or something like that whenever they want. But they're not going to do, like a 40-day all across America tour anymore.
Right.
He announced that. And so he can kind of go into retirement from the road, which in your mid-60s, he's earned, right? So let him do it. Yeah, so it was sad. It was a sad day. I remember being really bummed out about it. I know people don't live to be 66 in his business, and not everybody makes it into their old age. But it was just a shock to me. I'm like, God, losing Tom Petty is a loss.
Yeah, and it wasn't like it was somebody who was notoriously in and out of rehab and everything else. Like, you never really heard anything about him being super into drugs. So yeah, it was a shock. And you think, I know you're not going to live forever, but hopefully we could have gotten a little more out of you.
I know. Bummer. But I'm glad we did this one, because the temptation would be to do Full Moon Fever, right? Or maybe to do, the first album or whatever. But being that this is an anniversary coming up, I had a unique relationship with it in that I saw You Got Lucky All the Time on MTV, didn't like it, but grew into loving the song.
Yeah.
It's a good one to review. And then in November, when it actually turns 40, we'll probably get some people to listen to this.
Yeah, I really think listening to it now, it's probably a record that gets passed over a lot because it only has the one track on it. And for somebody who's put out so many records, it's easy to skip over it. But if you get into it, it's really got some good stuff going on with pretty much all the tracks.
Well, that's right. You Got Lucky is the only track that made it onto the Greatest Hits album. And that's the way it should be, to be honest with you. As much as I love, what's my new favorite song? Change of Heart. Much as I love Change of Heart, how special it suddenly is to me. It wasn't a hit on the radio. It didn't make a dent in pop culture, and it wouldn't even be on like a double Greatest Hits album. So that's why I like the record, because it's got the one that really kind of grabbed me and grabbed my attention, good or bad with Tom Petty, but that it's also got some nice rockin' tracks that I can appreciate at this age, because I know what Tom Petty's music sounds like, and I know what he's about, and I know what he likes to stand up for and how his music's supposed to sound. So I'm like, yep, this is a really good Tom Petty album. It might not be a diamond seller like some of his others, and it might not have 3 top 40 hits, but this is solid Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Yeah, and I think if you are a fan of his music, you're best served going back and listening to stuff like this, because you will get more of an appreciation, and you're going to find songs you haven't heard before, but you're going to say, I really like that. I don't know why I missed that to begin with, but better late than never.
Yeah, I got a feeling this won't be the last Tom Petty project that we do a show on over the years.
No, absolutely.
Well, that is the end of our show on Tom Petty's Long After Dark, the early 80s album that spawned one big radio MTV hit, but was kind of overlooked in the later years after his huge success as a technically a solo artist with Full Moon Fever, and after his run with the Wilburys, his reunification with the Heartbreakers, and the enormous greatest hits album of the early 90s. Some songs on there will never be played live, and some were forgotten, but I'm telling you, Long After Dark is one of Tom Petty's best records. I really loved it. I loved that first side, and I love Change of Heart. It's a great song. Yes, it was a single, but it wasn't a huge hit. Very much overlooked by the general public. And I think you guys, if you want a good listen, go check this one out. I think you'll really, really like it. I enjoyed it very much. So did Jackson. And I won't forget about it soon. Now, as usual, did we get something right? Did we get something wrong? Did we miss the point? Did we leave out your favorite part? You have to let us know. You can DM us and tweet us at ugly_werewolf or at actionjack72. Let us know which songs, albums, bands, events, concerts that you want us to review on there. And next week, well, we've got a bunch of stuff in the queue right now. We're kind of deciding which way we're going to go. It might be a kind of a heavy metal episode, just to give you a little bit of a warning there. We've been doing some Iron Maiden. We've been doing some Judas Priest. So I'm not sure even. I can't even tell you sitting here right now which album review we're going to have out next week. So you're just going to have to tune in. Of course, you can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Good Pods is a great one. Great place to discover new podcasters and interact with them. Neat place. I think you should check it out. But anywhere you go, please give us a good review if you have the time. It just helps us find more rock and roll fans like you, helps us grow the show, helps us line up more guests. And we got some cool guests coming on in the next couple months that I think that you will enjoy. So as usual, rock and rollers all around the world, until next time, be cool and stay safe.